The letter in the coffee shop. It was a gray morning in downtown Seattle, the kind where the clouds hung so low they brushed the tops of buildings and made the whole world feel hushed. Ethan Cole sat by the window of Haven Coffee, his laptop open but untouched, his gaze fixed on the envelope lying on the table before him. It wasn't just any envelope. It was addressed in looping handwriting that looked both hurried and delicate. To whoever finds this, maybe you were meant to. He'd found it 2 nights ago, tucked between the seats of a train he almost didn't take. Inside were 3 folded pages, a letter written by someone who'd clearly needed to speak, to confess, to heal. There was no name, no address, just raw honesty in every line. She wrote about losing faith in people, about feeling invisible, about how she kept leaving small notes in public places, hoping someone might read one and feel a little less alone. Ethan hadn't expected the words to shake him, but they did, because they sounded like him, or at least, the part of him he didn't show anyone. For 2 days, he couldn't stop thinking about her. The stranger who wrote as if she'd known his heart. He turned the letter over now, noticing faint smudges of rain near the signature line, blank except for an initial, L. That morning, Ethan did something impulsive. He posted a photo of the letter on a local community forum, captioning it, "To the person who wrote this, I found your letter on the 9:40 train from Capitol Hill. I think it was meant to be found. Please reach out if you see this." He expected nothing. Maybe a few likes. Maybe silence. But by afternoon, a reply appeared. "I didn't think anyone would actually find it. Lila." Ethan stared at the screen for a full minute before typing back. "Hi, Lila. Your letter. It was beautiful. I'd really like to return it to you." She took a while to respond. "You don't have to return it. It was meant for whoever found it. Maybe. But I'd still like to meet you, if that's okay." After a long pause, she sent one last message. "Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Haven Coffee, Pike Street. I'll be the one with the yellow notebook." Ethan smiled despite himself, the first real smile in weeks. He didn't know why, but it felt like something inside him had just shifted. The meeting. The next morning, the same gray light filtered through the cafe windows. Ethan arrived early, letter in hand, palms slightly sweaty. He ordered black coffee, tried to look casual, failed miserably. At exactly 10, she walked in. Lila. She wasn't what he'd pictured. She was better. Wavy chestnut hair, a yellow notebook clutched against her chest, and the kind of quiet energy that made people turn to look twice without knowing why. She spotted him almost instantly, offered a hesitant smile, and walked over. "Ethan." Her voice was soft, melodic, the kind that carried warmth even when wrapped in nervousness. He stood, nodded. "Yeah. Lila, right?" She nodded, sitting across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city hummed outside, the espresso machine hissed, and time seemed to slow. He slid the envelope across the table. "This is yours." Lila touched it gently, tracing the smudged corner with her finger. "I didn't think anyone would actually read it." "I did," he said quietly. "Every word." Her eyes flicked up to his, uncertain but curious. "Why?" "Because," he hesitated, "because it felt like you were writing about me." Something flickered in her expression, surprise, recognition, maybe even relief. She smiled faintly. "Then maybe I did." They both laughed softly, and just like that, the air shifted again, lighter, warmer. Conversations that didn't feel like first ones. They talked for hours. About small things at first, the weather, the train, favorite coffee orders. But soon, The conversation turned deeper. Lila told him she was a freelance illustrator, that she often left her letters in random places when her thoughts got too heavy. "It's my way of letting go," she said. "I don't expect replies. I just hope someone somewhere feels seen." Ethan told her he was a journalist, or used to be, before the burnout hit. He'd stopped writing for others and started writing for himself, though lately, even that had felt empty. Until her letter. There was something magnetic about the way they spoke, like two frequencies finally aligning. At one point, Lila looked down at the cup between her hands and whispered, "You ever feel like the world keeps asking for pieces of you until there's nothing left to give?" He nodded. "All the time." And in that shared silence, something wordless passed between them. Understanding, recognition, maybe the start of something that neither dared name yet. Before they parted, it was nearly 1 p.m. when they realized how long they'd been there. The cafe had emptied out. Rain began to patter against the window again. Lila stood, slipping the letter back into her notebook. "Thank you," she said, "for bringing this back. For reading it." Ethan smiled. "Thank you for writing it." They exchanged numbers, cautiously, but with smiles that betrayed more hope than they admitted. As she turned to leave, he called out, "Hey, Lila." She looked back. "I don't know what made you leave that letter, but I'm glad you did." Her eyes softened. "Me too." Then she was gone, yellow notebook, raincoat, and all. Ethan stood there for a long moment, the bell above the cafe door still ringing faintly. He didn't know it yet, but that single letter had just rewritten the story of both their lives. The rain that afternoon didn't stop. It followed Ethan home, a soft, steady rhythm against his windows, matching the quiet hum in his chest. He hadn't felt this alive in months. Lila's letter lay open on his desk again, the edges a little more worn, the ink slightly faded. He'd read it enough times to know every line by heart, but now, after meeting her, the words felt different. Alive. Personal. He found himself smiling at the closing line. If anyone ever finds this, maybe it's not by accident. Weeks of messages. Over the next few weeks, they talked constantly. Texts, calls, long coffee meetups that stretched into evenings. Sometimes they didn't talk about anything at all. They'd sit at the same corner table, laptops open, silent but comfortable, their glances saying more than words ever could. Ethan started writing again, really writing. Lila's openness had done something to him. He began freelancing again, his words sharper, more honest, as if her letter had unlocked a part of his voice he'd lost. Lila, in turn, started painting again. Her illustrations had color again, soft hues of light, emotion, and hope. She sent him a photo one night, a painting of a train seat with sunlight streaming in through the window. Underneath, she'd written, "The place where everything changed." He replied, "Maybe not everything, but maybe it started there." She sent back a smiley. Simple, sweet, perfect. The distance that grew quietly. Then, as often happens in real life, things began to shift, subtly, silently. Lila got a big project offer, a 6-month design contract in Portland. It was everything she'd been working toward. When she told Ethan over coffee one morning, he smiled and congratulated her. But a flicker of something unreadable passed in his eyes. "That's amazing," he said. "You deserve it." "Yeah," she murmured. "It's just 6 months. 6 months isn't forever." But they both knew that sometimes 6 months could change everything. The night before she left, they met one last time. Same cafe, same corner. The air was heavy, full of the words neither of them could quite say. Lila slid a small envelope across the table. "Don't open it until I'm gone," she said softly. He frowned. Lila. She smiled sadly. Just promise me. He nodded. And for a long moment, they just sat, fingers almost touching, hearts entirely connected. When she stood, she whispered, "You're the only person who ever returned something I thought was lost forever." Then she left, and the bell above the door echoed long after she was gone. The letter he almost didn't read. Ethan didn't open her envelope that night, or the next day. He kept it on his nightstand for weeks, unopened. Maybe he was scared that reading it would mean it was over. He threw himself into work instead. Wrote articles. Met deadlines. Tried not to check his phone every 10 minutes. But one late night, when the rain returned, the same kind as the day they met, he finally opened it. Inside were two things: a small watercolor sketch of him sitting by the cafe window, sunlight on his face, and a letter. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm probably already gone. Not forever, just for now. You told me once you stopped writing because you felt no one was listening. But you were wrong. I was. Every word. Even before we met. You see, that first letter, the one you found, wasn't the only one. I've been leaving them for years. Notes to no one. Or maybe, notes to you, even when I didn't know your name yet. So, if fate was kind enough to bring you one letter, maybe it's asking you to write the next one. I'll be waiting, in the words, in the silence, in the spaces between. Lila." He sat there for a long time, the words sinking in like soft rain. She'd been writing to him all along. He just hadn't known it. 6 months later. Spring arrived like a promise. The city thawed, and with it, so did Ethan. He started leaving his own letters, small folded pages tucked into library books, cafe tables, park benches. Each one began the same way. "To whoever finds this, maybe it's not by accident." And each one ended the same. "I hope this finds you, Lila." He didn't know if she'd ever see them, but it felt right to send something into the world again. Then, one evening in late April, as he sat in Haven Coffee writing, the bell above the door rang. He didn't look up at first, until he heard a familiar voice. "Are you still writing letters to strangers, Ethan Cole?" He froze, then turned. Lila stood there, sunlight catching in her hair, that same yellow notebook in her hands. He blinked, half afraid she'd vanish like a memory. "Lila." She smiled. "I found one of your letters. The one you left in the art gallery on 5th. "You found it?" His voice trembled. "Of course I did." She stepped closer. "You were writing to me, weren't you?" He laughed softly. "I guess I was." And then, without hesitation, she crossed the room and hugged him, that kind of hug that dissolves time, distance, everything. When they pulled back, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "So, do I get to keep this one?" Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No," he said quietly. "This one's not a letter." She frowned playfully. "No." He shook his head. "This one's a beginning." Epilogue: The Letters We Find. Months later, the cafe kept a small box near the counter labeled Lost Letters. Inside it were dozens, some old, some new, some anonymous, some signed. The staff joked that the box was enchanted. Somehow, the right letter always found the right person. Ethan and Lila never said much about how it started. But sometimes, when the rain hit the windows just right, they'd sit by the same table, writing side by side. He'd write his articles. She'd sketch quietly. And sometimes, they'd leave one folded page behind, for whoever needed it next. After all, some stories don't end. They just keep finding new readers.